All right, let's talk about ABK. Let's talk about the deal, what's been going on, CMA, all that stuff. I know it's been probably getting old for a lot of people because everyone's been talking about it nonstop, but it's pretty absurd what's going on here. And there's so much. There's a 76-page document where they go into depth about everything. But then there's this 15-page document where they give more of an overview of their reasoning behind everything. Let's go through it. I know this may be kind of long. I'm not going to read through everything, but let's go through this 15-page kind of summary of their reasoning, their issue statement, whatever, of going to phase 2, investigating this deal, and all that type of stuff. So buckle in. This may take a little bit of time, but let's get to it. So this is their issue statement: anticipated acquisition of Microsoft Corporation of Activision Blizzard. Published 14th of October 2022. On 15th of September, the Competition and Markets Authority, as the CMA, in exercise of its duty under Section 331 of the Enterprise Act 2002, referred the anticipated acquisition by Microsoft of Activision Blizzard for further investigation and report by a group of CMA panel members, the inquiry group. Microsoft and Activision are together referred to as parties, okay, and the first statements referring to the future, the merged entity. All right. One second here. Okay. So they talk about in exercises of duty under Section 36(1) of the Act, the CMA must decide whether arrangements are in progress or in contemplation, which, if carried into effect, will result in the creation of a relevant merger situation, and if so, whether the creation of that relevant merger situation may be expected to result in a substantial lessening of competition. So this is the thing that they continuously talk about through this document, and it is SLC, substantial lessening of competition. That's what they're focusing on. They want to decide if Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard, if they approve this deal, will it lessen the competition? Specifically, how badly will it hurt PlayStation? I mean, that's essentially what this entire thing is. They say result in SLC within any market or markets in the United Kingdom for goods and services. Okay, so the purpose of this issue statement is to consider reaching a decision if there's going to be a substantial lessening of competition. They've gone through phase 1, which they have a lot of detailed background information about everything that's been going on with the deal. They did an investigation. They did information gathering for further evidence. They asked third parties for information. They go over the parties, talk about Microsoft here, and they say basically what Microsoft is about: the technology company, productivity, business, intelligent cloud, and more personalized computing. Talk about the different divisions. We know one of the biggest divisions for them is Azure, which I think is going to be like their most important division because it is their cloud platform, which they make deals with other companies with. I believe that they made a deal with PlayStation, a partnership to be able to use their cloud services and cloud gaming. But apparently Xbox cloud gaming is not run off of Azure. I think that was one of the things that Microsoft countered with. That's like, it's not even a valid argument because it's not even running off of Azure. So take that for what you will, but Xbox cloud gaming is going to be a massive part of Xbox going forward. It's going to be probably their main. I think what they're trying to set themselves up where Xbox cloud gaming is where most people are playing Xbox in the next 10 years or so. I think that's what they're going for. Once internet becomes just so like good enough everywhere, easily accessible everywhere, I think that's what their end goal is at the end of everything, which means that that's why they're putting Xbox cloud gaming on literally every device. We even saw this week in a video that I had made where Microsoft mentions that PlayStation blocked Xbox cloud gaming from coming onto their platform. And they were using that as an argument as to CMA saying that they're going to have a monopoly or a big competitive advantage with cloud gaming because there's no real big cloud competitors out there, which obviously is false. We've seen there was Stadia. They failed. Nothing to do with Xbox. They just failed at what they did. They didn't provide value. They had great streaming, a great streaming platform in terms of the quality they provided, but like they didn't provide any value to the customer with getting people to want to sign up to Stadia over use other gaming platforms. And I think it's also showing that the entire video game industry as a whole isn't ready for cloud gaming yet. There are people that enjoy cloud gaming. There are people that use cloud gaming. I use cloud gaming occasionally, but more people still enjoy gaming natively on a console, downloading the game and playing it off of that, downloading it on a PC and playing it off of that, downloading games on their phone and playing it off that. More people, way more people, I think, are still into that. So cloud gaming is still so early and it's going to grow. We're just not there yet. So saying that like Xbox is going to just be able to stomp out any cloud gaming competition right now is absurd. I mean, Stadia didn't fail because of Xbox. They failed because they failed because of themselves. They failed because they had a service that just didn't provide enough value and not enough people wanted to use it. That's pretty much it. Anyways, to talk about the other divisions, Xbox Game Studios, digital distribution, and gaming subscription services. Microsoft offers multi-game subscription services that include access to first and third-party games. We know what it is, right? Gold, Game Pass, cloud gaming, all that type of stuff. And then they talk about Activision. They go over the merger as well. Basically talking about the agreement, the price they paid for it, some of the games that are going to be coming, like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Candy Crush Saga. They talk about how improved Microsoft's presence in the mobile segment where Activision holds an established position, particularly through King. We know this is a massive thing that Xbox is doing, or that they want from this deal, is a bigger mobile presence. It's going to be huge. This is going to be the biggest thing. We look at Call of Duty coming onto console, but the biggest thing that Xbox is getting out of this deal is mobile gaming. King, Candy Crush, Call of Duty Mobile, Diablo Immortal, Warzone Mobile. Like, that is by far the biggest win for Xbox, I would say, for their platform, the amount of money that they're going to make. And Call of Duty is huge, but we know Call of Duty is still staying on PlayStation. We know Call of Duty is still staying on their platforms, which still is a smart move because those platforms just pay Xbox to invest further into Game Pass, into the Xbox ecosystem. So their inquiry. Below, we set out some specific areas that we intend to assess in order to help parties who wish to make representations to us. We shall consider the question of jurisdiction in our inquiry. A relevant merger situation exists where the following conditions are satisfied. 2 or more enterprises have ceased to be distinct. Okay, that's just saying that basically 2 companies become one company. That is a merger. So they're going to compare the prospects of competition resulting from the merger against the competitive situation without the merger. I mean, this is the biggest thing, right? What's the market like before? What's the market like after the merger? The latter is called the counterfactual. The counterfactual is not a statutory test, but rather an analytical tool used in answering the question of whether a merger gives rise to SLC. And as we know, SLC, lessening of competition. What's the first word here? Substantial lessening of competition. So that's the main thing, like I said, that they are looking for in their investigations into this deal. Substantial lessening of competition. Counterfactual may consist of prevailing conditions of competition or conditions of competition that involve stronger or weaker competition between the merger firms than under the prevailing conditions of competition. So they're just basically laying out their criteria of looking at SLC. In its phase 1 decision, the CMA found no evidence supporting a different counterfactual other than the prevailing conditions of competition. We currently intend to adopt the prevailing conditions of competition as the most likely counterfactual to the merger, but welcome any evidence on this part of our assessment. So we're looking at competition. As we know, Satya and Nadella said, let's compete. CMA doesn't seem to want to let them compete from what we're reading in their decision. Market definition, theories of harm. Let's get to the counterfactual here. Input foreclosure of rival multi-game subscription services. Okay, so here's some. There we go. I'm getting to it. Okay, countervailing factors. Okay. Okay, so they go over a lot. They go over a lot of stuff here in terms of their counterfactual reasons for the substantial lessening of competition, reasons that were put forward obviously by PlayStation, by Sony. We've seen the stuff that they have put out. And they say here, in its phase 1 decision, the CMA found that the merger gave rise to a realistic prospect of a substantial lessening of competition. I like saying that because it's like such an important reason as to what this entire thing is about. As a result of vertical effects arising from Microsoft withholding or degrading Activision's content, including popular games such as COD from other consoles or multi-game subscription services, and Microsoft leveraging its broader ecosystem together with Activision Games catalog to strengthen network effects, raise barriers to entry, and ultimately foreclose rivals in cloud gaming services. So these 2 points here. First of all, we already know we've seen these points. Withholding or degrading Activision's content. Withholding, they've already said they're putting the games onto PlayStation. We know that. When you play Xbox, you play literally anywhere. You can play on any device. It's the only platform right now out of the big three, if we want to just look at Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, that gives gamers a choice of where they want to play their games, or at least multiple choices. Again, we have to be fair. PlayStation has they have started bringing their games onto PC, so we can't ignore that. But it's still not even close to like the value that you get with the Game Pass and Xbox Cloud Gaming. So right away, it's like if they would have just did 5 seconds, a 5-second Google search, they would know that that point makes absolutely no sense. Leveraging its broader ecosystem together with Activision Games to strengthen network effects, raise barriers to entry, and ultimately foreclose rivals in cloud gaming services. So I guess they're arguing with companies, I guess, if you think about Stadia, people would never sign up to something like Stadia because what's the point? Xbox has the best cloud gaming service. They have the most games. They have the most value. And the response to that, I would say, is these companies have to compete. That's the whole point of this. Thinking that Call of Duty is or Activision Blizzard games are the only games that are going to get people over to a cloud gaming service, it's absolutely absurd. It's an absolutely absurd take by a massive market authority. Thinking that that's going to be the thing that ends other cloud gaming services. We know Microsoft's a $1 trillion company. I get it. But there are other companies. You can't tell me that Google, just a huge company, almost as big, right? Like they are one of the most powerful companies in the entire world. You can't tell me that if they wanted to, they couldn't do the same things that Xbox and Microsoft are doing. If they wanted to take a bunch of resources, take billions of dollars and invest it into gaming, they couldn't go out and buy a ton of publishers. They couldn't go out and create a ton of studios and make these huge, compelling games that people want to play and come over to Google Stadia for. You can't convince me that they couldn't do that. They definitely could do that if they wanted to compete. They obviously didn't want to compete. They got into cloud gaming. They got into video games and okay, this is not as profitable as we thought it was going to be. So let's just end it now and let's stick to what we're good at, which is mobile gaming with Google Play. So I don't know. What barriers are they raising? I'm not sure. Maybe deterring I guess because Sony's a far smaller company. That's the only thing I can think of, right? Nintendo's surviving. They're out here doing their thing, but they also mentioned that, I think I have a tweet here where they talk about it, where they mention how Nintendo can't be compared. It's a different style of company. We are currently intent to focus our competitive assessment on these theories of harm at phase 2. So these are the two main things that they're going to be looking at in phase 2 going forward. Vertical effects may arise when a merger involves firms at different levels of the supply chain. For example, a merger between a firm and an upstream supplier or a downstream customer. In certain circumstances, vertical mergers can weaken rivalry. For example, when they result in foreclosure of the merged firm's competitors. So why don't they just say here, for example, when they result in foreclosure of Sony, of PlayStation, of the PlayStation division at Sony, It's not going to happen. It's so absurd. It's not going to happen. PlayStation isn't going to close down because this deal goes through. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, sure, they're going to not make as much money. They're not going to make as much money off of Call of Duty. They're going to be paying Xbox for Call of Duty rights, and those royalties are going to be invested directly into Xbox Game Pass, and Xbox is going to be able to take that money and continue to add more awesome games for Xbox gamers. But PlayStation is still going to do what they do. They're still going to make first-party games that people enjoy playing. They're still going to have their marketing deals with third-party games, which is where they make the most amount of their money. And they're going to still have exclusive content from third parties, exclusive things like they're doing with Hogwarts Legacy, which are going to get people to go over and buy the PlayStation version. They're still going to have the PlayStation Network where they control all the pricing, and they're going to push and funnel as many people into that as the only way to be able to play their games. And they're going to make a ton of money off of that. They're going to be fine. PlayStation is going to be fine. They're going to still charge an extra $10 for their games, and the Sony fanboys are going to run out and pay it no matter what, even if it's a remake of a game for the third time. They're going to still do all of those practices that are going to make them a ton of money because they have brand loyalty that is exceptional. That's the truth. They have incredible brand loyalty that they've built up over generations. Now, I was a PlayStation fan back in the day, but I've seen what PlayStation has been doing over the last couple of years or so, and my enjoyment of the way that they, I guess, treat customers isn't there anymore. It's not nearly as I used to love PlayStation. I have had every PlayStation console since they've released, but they take advantage of their customers, take advantage of that brand loyalty. They don't provide, like, you look what Xbox is doing. Yeah, I guess you could argue that Xbox has to kind of catch up with creating that brand loyalty after an Xbox One generation that wasn't up to par for a lot of people. But at the same time, they've gone, I think, above and beyond with a lot of stuff that they are doing. And you don't generally expect that of a $1 trillion corporation to have that great customer value. But they've been doing that, and that's why people love Xbox right now. That's the biggest reason I would say people love Xbox. It's just the value they bring to their consumers, and it can't be beaten anywhere else. Continuing on here, in assessing a foreclosure theory of harm, the CMA's approach is to consider whether 3 cumulative conditions are satisfied. Ability. Would the merged entity have the ability to use its control of inputs or to restrict rivals' access to a customer, to harm the competitiveness or incentive to compete of its rivals? Incentives. Would it have the incentive actually to do so? Would it be profitable? Effect. Would the foreclosure of these rivals substantially lessen overall competition? So 1, ability. Could Xbox do it? Absolutely. They absolutely could do it if they wanted to. No doubt about it. If they wanted to take Call of Duty, delete every single version of Call of Duty off of PlayStation now and going forward, they could absolutely do that. But we've previously seen in the past, they haven't done that. You look at Minecraft, still on everything. You look at Deathloop, you look at Ghostwire Tokyo. I mean, they could have, if they wanted to, paid a fine to cancel those deals, and it would have been pennies, right? Like, it would have probably not been that much money for them. They didn't do it. Look at Bethesda. One of the things they argue in their argument towards stopping this deal is that first-party games currently within Xbox are not on other platforms, or not on other subscription platforms. It's like you could have taken 5 seconds and Googled how many Bethesda games are currently within PlayStation Plus or have been on PlayStation Plus. And they're going to continue with stuff like Elder Scrolls Online that are staying on all these other platforms, right? They've already said that. So could they? Yes. Will they? No. Incentive. Would it have incentive to actually do so? Would it be profitable? It wouldn't be profitable for a game like Call of Duty. I don't think it would be. At least right now, it would not be profitable to take it off the platform. And the effect with the foreclosure of these rivals substantially lessen overall competition. Of course. Nobody wants PlayStation to well, I'm sure some people want PlayStation to absolutely go away. I don't. It would hurt competition greatly. So one of the big things why a lot of people want this deal to go through is because it's like, this is so big. There's so many IPs that Xbox is going to own on top of what they already have with Bethesda. It's literally going to force PlayStation to get out of that stupid virtuous cycle. They're going to have to get out of that virtuous cycle. We're already seeing them get out of the dumb virtuous cycle Jim Ryan keeps talking about. They're starting to make live service games. They're going to start making more IPs, more games for different genres that appeal to more gamers. They're already starting to do that because of the competition increasing. If it wasn't for competition increasing, we wouldn't get that. We would be getting the 5th remake of The Last of Us next year. That's literally what would be happening if there was no competition. And when I say 5th, because they would release a 4th one halfway through the year and then a 5th one by the end of the year. In the following sections, we consider how these 3 cumulative conditions were considered to apply to the theories of harm in the CMA's Phase 1 decision, and how the CMA proposes to investigate them further in Phase 2. So, I guess this is how they're investigating them. In Phase 1 decision, the CMA found that there was a realistic prospect of an SLC, substantial lessening of competition, in gaming consoles together with their digital storefronts as a result of the merged entity engaging in foreclosure strategies such as making Activision content unavailable on rival consoles, exclusive to Xbox, making Activision content available for release on rival console gaming platforms at a later date compared to Xbox, timed exclusivity, degrading the quality of Activision gaming content available to rival console gaming platforms, making features or upgrades for Activision games unavailable to other console gaming platforms, i.e. content exclusivity, and or raising the wholesale price of Activision content on rival consoles and gaming platforms. This is one of the most absurd things to actually read, and this clearly shows these people who are looking at this have absolutely no understanding of the video game industry. Zero. Not even an ounce of understanding, because everything that they mentioned in those points are literally everything that Sony does currently right now, and they still do it. I mean, I remember when this went to Phase 2, Sony literally put out an ad advertising exclusive content for Call of Duty on PlayStation that you would have to get a PlayStation to access. And they're saying that these are the things that led to them coming to this decision for Phase 1. It's just absolutely absurd. They literally didn't even take a second to Google anything that Sony fed them. It's actually crazy to think about. But literally everything, like making Activision content unavailable on rival consoles. I mean, PlayStation is the king of console exclusivity. Making Activision content available for release on rival console gaming platforms at a later date. PlayStation is the king of timed exclusivity. One of the worst practices, I think. I think it's an absolutely terrible practice. Xbox has done it too, don't get me wrong, but PlayStation is the king of it. Degrading the quality of Activision gaming content available to rival gaming platforms. So this one, I don't know how much this happens. I know we've seen stuff about like parity in terms of the game, how it looks, how it runs. I'm drawing a blank. Was it with Resident Evil that they did this? I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments. I think there was something where PlayStation had a clause where the games had to be similar or had to be the exact same. They couldn't run better on Xbox, something like that. Or that could just be like something I read that I was completely off about. So don't quote me on that. But there's no way. I don't think in any way Xbox would do that. I just don't see them doing it. Why would they? Because why would you go out of your way to create a clause to degrade content available on PlayStation specifically when the games that they are going to be putting out are going to be accessed on all of these different specs of PCs through cloud gaming, through people's Logitech G Cloud, like all of these different platforms where obviously everyone's going to have a different version of the game, like in terms of how it looks and how it runs. Why would they put a clause in place just to make it worse on PlayStation? It makes absolutely no sense. There's no incentive for Xbox to ever do that. It just doesn't make any sense. Making features or upgrades of Activision games available to other console gaming platforms. Content exclusivity. Like PlayStation does all the time. I mean, they did it with Hogwarts Legacy with an exclusive quest. Like, come on. This is crazy that they actually thought of these things as the reason to coming to this decision. Raising the wholesale price of Activision content on rival gaming platforms. This one, I don't know. I mean, they could do it. I doubt they would do it. They want to get the game out to as many people as possible. Why would they reduce that incentive? Again, doesn't make any sense. In relation to ability, the CMA found that The merged entity would have significant upstream market power in publishing games for consoles. Of course, I mean, they're going to own one of the biggest game every single year. They're going to be able to, if they decided to put the game on Xbox, sure. But they've already said they're keeping it on PlayStation. Activision's content is an important input for PlayStation. Okay, great. But they lost this competition for Activision. Go out and make something that's just as important, right? Go out and compete. Go out and make a game that will bring them as much money as Call of Duty has brought them. Make a deal with Xbox. Do business, right? This is why does that even matter? Why does that point even matter? An economically significant number of PlayStation gamers could switch to Xbox if Activision's content were no longer available or not available on equal terms on PlayStation, something that PlayStation's already done with Call of Duty. How many people do you think went from Xbox to PlayStation since 2015 because of the exclusive content PlayStation had on Call of Duty? We don't know the number, but I'm telling you, it's probably a ton of people. So again, another absurd point. There are a few, if any, alternative franchises with COD's level of brand awareness and popularity amongst gamers. Hence why PlayStation paid all that money for all the marketing rights and then kept content exclusives to get people away from other platforms to play it on their platform. But now, because Xbox is doing it, it's a bad thing. Sony is Microsoft's closest competitor in gaming consoles. Okay. By contrast, Nintendo offers differentiated hardware and content aimed primarily at different, more family-friendly customer segment. And you know what? That is an argument that I know people are going all up in arms about this. It is true. Nintendo does offer more content aimed for the family-friendly stuff. But at the same time, have you seen the Nintendo Switch? Have you seen how many units they have sold? Have you seen all of the hardcore, you could say, gaming games that have come onto the platform? The only reason why, when you thought about Nintendo, I guess with the Wii U was a failure, but with the Wii, that it was only for families because they had the motion controls and everybody went out and bought a Nintendo Wii. They sold so many, but everyone went out and bought a Nintendo Wii, played Wii Sports, and then didn't touch their Wii ever again, right? But there was still there's Call of Duty on the Nintendo Wii. And the Nintendo Switch is similar. They have like Wii Fit, they have like Wii Sports, they have like that game that they launch with, like that party game, whatever. They have all of those styles of game, which are also games on Xbox and on PlayStation. There's games like that, but they have literally so many hardcore games. They have so many RPGs. They have action games. They have first-person shooters. They literally have everything because it's a popular console. Developers want to put their games on the console because there's a massive install base. So it's not aimed, I wouldn't say it's aimed primarily at the more family-friendly segment. I would say that it is always a part of Nintendo's strategy, which is children and the family with some of their first-party games that they release, but third parties literally put everything onto the Nintendo Switch now because the console has sold so much. So Microsoft still needs to compete against Nintendo. They can't just be like, oh, forget about Nintendo. We don't have to worry about them. That doesn't make any sense at all. It's always been those three competing against each other. They just had all different strategies on how to compete. And Nintendo's right now has been mobile gaming more so than anything. A lot less. It was the Nintendo Switch's main strategy right now, I would say, personally, my opinion is that it's not the family friendly gamers that they ever trying to win over. It's the mobile market. People who play games on their phone, people who like taking their just games on the go, people who are playing the Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS. Those are a lot of the people that they were targeting. Because if you look at the Nintendo 3DS, if you look at how well that sold, you look at how well the Nintendo DS, well, I forget if the DS did that well, but the Nintendo 3DS started off slow and did really well. They were probably thinking, we got to transfer all of those gamers who are into mobile gaming, plus all of the console gamers, and get them into one platform, which is what they've done with the Switch. And it's worked out incredibly for them. They've done an incredible job. Sony's existing contractual protections from existing arrangements with Activision would not undermine Microsoft's ability to engage in partial or total foreclosure because they may not account for all the possible foreclosure mechanisms that could be available to the merged entity. They could be renegotiated or terminated early, and they may not be enforced depending on the respective parties' respective bargaining positions. Okay, so their existing contractual protections would not undermine Microsoft's ability to engage in partial or total foreclosure because they may not account for possible foreclosure mechanisms. So they're saying that their current agreements could just be completely reversed, and that Xbox, I guess, could come in here and foreclose Sony with terminating them early or renegotiating them. I don't know. That one seems pretty broad to me. I don't know why they would do that, but I guess you could say, okay, they got a point here. If they really want to do that and destroy PlayStation, that's their entire goal, which I don't, it could be not. I don't know if Xbox's entire goal of this thing is to destroy PlayStation. I don't think it is. I don't even think that they think about PlayStation that much, honestly. I think Phil Spencer has made it pretty clear in some of his interviews that their competition now are companies that are going to be getting into cloud gaming in the ecosystem and in subscription and like getting their content out there on every single device. PlayStation hasn't evolved. They haven't evolved in generations. They literally continuously are doing the same thing, and we're slowly seeing them now start to evolve into waking up and saying, oh shit, we need to actually compete now because Xbox is taking gaming seriously. We need to compete with them now, or we're not going to last. If Sony forecloses, it's not because Xbox bought Activision Blizzard, it's because Sony just failed to evolve. And you see that in business, multiple different sectors of business. Companies that are at the top, they sit on the rest on their laurels. They don't evolve, they don't change, and then they're gone. It happens all the time. And if Sony isn't there, it's only because of Sony, and it is not because of Xbox and Microsoft. If anything, Xbox and Microsoft are making gaming better for gamers. They're giving us more value. They are providing more value. They're making it easier to access games. They're growing the entire gaming industry, which at the end of the day is going to be better for everybody. I got these spam bots in freaking YouTube. They got to get their shit together and handle these stupid spam bots. Sorry. In relation to incentive, the CMA found that financial modeling of the merger suggests that the merged entity's incentive to foreclose Sony may be considerably stronger than suggested by the parties. So they're pretty much saying they don't believe Xbox. They don't believe Phil Spencer. They don't believe Satya Nadella with anything that they're saying. That's essentially what they're saying here. They don't believe that they're going to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. They don't believe that their goal isn't to just completely squash Sony. They don't believe that they don't care where people access their games. They're putting their games everywhere. They don't believe any of that. That's what they're saying with that statement there. Microsoft's past business practices suggest that it may be willing to make losses in the short term in order to build scale and increase its user base. In particular, Microsoft has previously acquired publishers and made their upcoming games exclusive to Xbox, when those publishers had previously made their content available to all consoles. Okay, so let's think about this. Bethesda, the most recent one. Okay, I guess you could think of like every other company, publisher, developer that they've acquired before that. I can't name every single game, but I guess like Hellblade was on PlayStation. Hellblade 2 is going to be exclusive. So, okay, fair point there. You think about Mojang, right? Minecraft, still available everywhere. A game that if you wanted to just destroy an entire base of gamers, where in terms of where they play, you put Minecraft only on Xbox. The amount of kids and adults, I mean, I have adult friends that still love Minecraft. I'm not trying to call it Minecraft here, but the amount of, I'm just using kids as an example because you think about the amount of kids who are playing Minecraft on their phone, on PC, on their PS4, on whatever, would nonstop be begging their parents to go out and buy an Xbox to play Minecraft, right? It would just be endless. Like they would be able to just get a huge amount of players and people picking up an Xbox to play Minecraft. They didn't do that, obviously. Bethesda. So new IPs like Starfield, Redfall are going to be exclusive to Xbox. Legacy IPs like Elder Scrolls Online staying multi-platform. We've seen Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. They honored those deals with PlayStation. So it's pretty obvious what they're doing is that games, new IPs going forward, new games that come out going forward are going to be exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. And the older legacy games are still going to be staying on the previous platform, which would allow those people to not have to switch and cancel or stop playing on PlayStation to be able to access those games. That makes a lot of sense. Talked about this in depth previously, why I think that is a good strategy. You keep those old games on there. You don't want to lose the money you're making from those gamers on PlayStation, just like Call of Duty. And Call of Duty is a yearly release, but you could argue that it's a live service game with every single game that they release because it's the same base. They just play it every single year. It's like a lot of people, it's probably one of the very few amount of games that they play every single year, but it's the same people. Essentially, it's the same thing if they would just keep Call of Duty as a live service. Why would you cut that revenue from money that you know is guaranteed rolling in, that you're going to be getting the royalties to see what you can reinvest into your platform? You don't, right? So them taking off these games that were previously available and content that was previously available on all consoles, they've already pretty much proven that they aren't doing that. Starfield was never available on PlayStation. Redfall, never available on PlayStation. Those coming over exclusive to Xbox completely doesn't matter to this point here because they were never previously available. And on top of that, they're still going to be available on multiple different platforms. So this argument here makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. Makes no sense because majority of previously available content that Xbox has on other platforms are staying on those platforms. Microsoft has pursued this strategy when acquiring content that is far less valuable than Activision games and hence far less likely to divert customers to its console. Because every single game, Microsoft, if you're Xbox, you evaluate it for the cost benefit of removing it from a previous platform and putting it on your platform. I guess the example I did use was Hellblade, but Hellblade 2 is a new game. It's not a continuing game. When did the first Hellblade come out? I forget the year, but it's been years, right? It's not a game that has these continuous live service style of customers that are just going to be load up PlayStation and be like, where did my game go? No, it's not for Hellblade 2 because it's a brand new game. So I'm not even sure what games that they're referring to. Maybe there's a list I don't know. I don't know specifically which content they're talking about, but it'd be great if they would detail the content because then it would make things a lot clearer. I have no idea which specific content they're talking about that Microsoft has pursued the strategy of acquiring the content that was previously available and taking it off the platform. Made their upcoming games exclusive to Xbox, and when the publishers had previously made their content available on all consoles. Microsoft could engage in partial foreclosure strategy, which would allow it to capture the most dedicated COD gamers. Okay, those who would switch to Xbox to benefit from enhanced content, interoperability, or earlier releases, whilst continuing to generate revenues from less dedicated PlayStation Call of Duty gamers who may not have switched to Xbox in response to total foreclosure strategy. Again, an absolute ridiculous argument because PlayStation has literally been doing this since 2015. They've literally been doing this. The benefit of playing Call of Duty on PlayStation since 2015 has been better. You're getting content that isn't available on Xbox. So this argument here, absurd. Because they're specifically mentioning PlayStation. This is why when I think about this, there's only two avenues that I think the CMA is going down right now. They have no idea what they're talking about. They haven't done any research. They haven't taken 5 seconds to Google. Or my brain goes to the crazy conspiracy side of thing where Sony is like, because it's politics, right? You know, lobbyists, all that type of shit, that they've lobbied them very hard to try to block this deal. That's where the conspiracy side goes. But we'll see. The CMA did not identify any persuasive evidence that Microsoft would be deterred from engaging in total or partial foreclosure strategies by the prospect of reputational damage to Xbox or Call of Duty. Well, I mean, Xbox and Phil Spencer literally have come out multiple times and said that they're keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation. Is that not persuasive evidence enough? I guess you just believe that they're lying. Fair enough. I mean, people lie. Companies lie all the time. I don't think you should ever believe a corporation. So fair enough. I guess I can't really argue that point. If you don't believe them, you don't believe them. In relation to effect, the CMA focused on the impact of the merger on competition in the market for gaming consoles generally, not just on its impact on any specific competitor. Yeah. See, this is where I don't believe them. Because Sony was like the only one that complained. However, since the CMA found that Sony is Microsoft's closest rival and highly concentrated market for gaming consoles, the CMA considered carefully the impact of the merger on Sony's competitiveness. But why? Why? Why is that the focus? Why is the focus of how well Sony is going to do at the end of this deal? Why is that the main focus of this entire thing? The focus should be on what Brazil said, which was it should be the consumer. And our consumer is going to be affected. It's just going to create more competition and that which will provide more value to the consumer. And it will at the end of the day, 100% will. The answer is yes, it will. Sony's still going to be able to compete. Other companies are going to see what Xbox is doing. They're going to ramp up their competition. For the entire industry, it's going to increase the competition, but they're focusing solely on how specifically, how is Sony going to compete from this? What's the result going to be on PlayStation? The CMA found that given the importance of Call of Duty to Sony PlayStation and the existence of strong direct and indirect network effects, any foreclosure strategy could have significant impact on Sony's revenues and user base. The impact of any foreclosure strategy on Sony may be particularly strong at the launch of the next generation of consoles. So they're thinking here that next generation, Xbox Series X2, there's not going to be no more Call of Duty on PlayStation. And that's a point that I think could come true. But it's still irrelevant. It still shouldn't block this deal if that was going to be true. Because if Sony can't do anything between now and the next generation of consoles to maybe not completely make up all of the money that they're going to lose from Call of Duty, but to position themselves in a way to be able to compete better with Xbox and Microsoft. Because I've predicted on the channel that Xbox is going to be bigger than PlayStation by the end of this generation. You can just see it. You can just see it by the way that they have positioned themselves since 2017 with Game Pass, cloud gaming, expanding out to multiple devices. They're going to be far bigger than PlayStation by the end of this generation, in my opinion. And if they can't do anything to stop to put themselves in a position where they're adequately able to compete with Xbox, that's on PlayStation's fault at the end of the day. It's not Call of Duty. It's not because of this deal. It's on PlayStation's fault. They haven't been able to adjust fast enough. If they took too long, if they sat back and took too long to adjust to the changing environment of the video game industry, that is on Sony PlayStation's fault. That is not on Xbox's fault. Because Xbox last generation were dead in the water. But they decided to adjust. They decided to invest more into gaming, and they're back. Sony can do the same. I mean, Sony is not suffering it any way right now. So that's on PlayStation if that happens during the next generation of consoles. So they say when both new and existing users decide which console to buy. So it's just absurd. The CMA found, therefore, that a material impact on Sony's ability to compete would have a detrimental impact on overall competition in the market and ultimately harm consumers. Example, through higher prices, reduced quality, or reduced innovation in games and gaming consoles. If Sony were to close tomorrow, it would hurt. It would hurt. Yeah, I agree with that. It would ultimately harm consumers if they were to close tomorrow. But one, they're not going to close tomorrow. And two, there's going to be other players that come up between now and next generation that are going to create the same competition that Sony has created over the multiple generations of gaming. So I don't think in any way this deal is going to cause... One, I don't think this deal is going to cause Sony to close. And two, I don't think that And two, I think that if they did close, there's going to be so many other competitors coming up between now and the next generation that the competition is still going to be going hard. Sony isn't going to be the determining factor of consumer quality of games and everything. It's just not going to happen. Input foreclosure of rival multi-game subscription services. Okay, so the parties rivals in multi-game subscription services include providers that for a regular subscription payment offers access to a catalog of games that can be downloaded to a user's PC or console or otherwise streamed to different devices via cloud. Okay, that's Game Pass. The CMA investigated whether the merged entity could harm Microsoft's rival and lessen current and future competition in multi-game subscription services through strategies such as making Activision's content unavailable on rival multi-game subscription services exclusive to Game Pass. Here's the thing. The rivals haven't created a multi-game subscription service that's even close to Game Pass yet. And that's not Xbox's fault. Like they were slow to the market. This is what business is. This is what competition is. They were slow. They didn't adjust. That's PlayStation's fault. There's not a rival right now. You could argue PlayStation Plus all you want, but it is not a true rival to Xbox Game Pass and everything that they are offering and everything they're going to be offering as it continues to grow. Making Activision's content available for release on rival multi-game subscription services at a later date compared to Microsoft subscription services, timed exclusivity. PlayStation has been doing timed exclusivity forever. Degrading the quality of so they're just going over the same shit. They're just talking about the same shit up here, but in terms of bringing that over to a subscription service. All those same points. I mean, Xbox is going to have exclusive content on Game Pass. I would be surprised if they didn't have exclusive perks on Game Pass for Call of Duty specifically. Am I a fan of that? Do I think that they should do it? From a business perspective, absolutely they should do it. From a consumer's perspective, I couldn't care less about it because I don't want the player bases across Call of Duty to be split up with content at all. I don't think that is a good thing because for a gamer, you want to be able to play with as many people as possible in a community for a game. And we've seen what PlayStation's already done with Call of Duty since 2015, and it's been bad for the game. So I don't want Xbox doing the same thing. But are they going to do it? Absolutely, they should. As a business, if I was a businessman, yeah, I'd be putting exclusive content onto Game Pass. It's not anti-competitive in a way that's going to destroy consumer value. PlayStation's going to be doing the exact same thing with PlayStation Plus. If you don't think PlayStation's in there right now thinking of all the exclusive content deals they want for PlayStation Plus and trying to get all of those, you're just absolutely crazy. So yeah, basically they use the same points that we talked about up here about in terms of consoles. They use it with cloud gaming. They use the same points here as to why they're going further into this investigation. In relation to ability, the CMA found that multi-game subscription services are becoming increasingly important, and Activision's content would likely be available on those platforms in the future. What Activision games are in a subscription service right now? I don't know. Don't think there are very many, if any. So there's no proof that this is even true other than the fact that they will be in Game Pass because Xbox bought them. But if Xbox didn't buy Call of Duty, would it ever enter a subscription service? Probably not. Right? Probably not. And if Xbox didn't buy Call of Duty and Activision Blizzard, would PlayStation still be having exclusive content on PlayStation and doing these anti-consumer practices? Most likely. So the argument that this is bad is crazy because at the end of the day, Call of Duty is coming to a subscription service that can literally be accessed on any point of entry with Xbox Game Pass, which is multiple devices. Activision's content may be as important to multi-game subscription services in future as it is to consoles today on a buy-to-play basis. Okay, sure. Game Pass is already the strongest provider of multi-game subscription services. Yeah, but this is because Phil Spencer came in and took over Xbox and realized that this is the way of the future. He was the first guy to come up with this stuff pretty much and make this the future of gaming. It's not his fault that he was ahead of the curve. You just did a great job with Xbox. Now other people need to compete and do the same thing. It's really not the rocket science here. Combining Activision's content with Game Pass could raise barriers to entry, entrench Microsoft's position as the leading provider of multi-game subscription services, and substantially reduce existing and potential competition. Sure, whatever. They're saying the same shit there. In relation to incentive, the CMA found that a static quantitative analysis of incentives would not be particularly informative in a dynamic market that exhibits direct and indirect network effects, particularly one that is nascent and rapidly developing, such as multi-game subscription services. Microsoft has publicly stated that one of the most important reasons behind the merger is to add Activision content to Game Pass to differentiate it from other multi-game subscription services, suggesting that it could have the incentive to make Activision's content exclusive to Game Pass. So CMA really does not want Call of Duty exclusive. They keep saying Activision's content, but they're saying Call of Duty. They don't want Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox Game Pass. That's essentially it. Which like Xbox said multiple times is still on PlayStation. If you're Xbox, you look at Call of Duty, you look at the amount of money PlayStation brings in to you because of Call of Duty. Why in the world would you take it off of PlayStation? It'll be exclusive to Game Pass, but it will still be on other platforms. People are going to go over to Game Pass. If PlayStation wants to compete with Game Pass, they're going to have to go out. Well, first of all, I've mentioned this in a video previously. PlayStation literally has the answer in front of them. Right in front of them. Even though only 12% of PlayStation gamers play their first-party games, if they put their first-party games into PlayStation Plus day one, they're going to have an insane, at least a 12% increase in their subscription PlayStation Plus premium tier. And they're going to get increases in subscription just from people who play a third-party game on PlayStation, log on, see, oh wow, this brand new first-party game from PlayStation Studios is coming into the service day and day. I might as well sign up for this service and see what else is available. That's going to happen, guaranteed. They have an answer right in front of them, but they're not willing to do that because they want to be able to sell their games at $70 for $10 more than Xbox's first party. And they want to not have to compete with a high value subscription services. That's all this is about. They don't want anything to change because they don't want to actually compete with what is going on within the industry right now. Microsoft's first-party titles are not available on any multi-game subscription services other than Game Pass, even where those titles are available for purchase on rival consoles. But their games are purchasable on PC through Steam. Why aren't PlayStation games purchasable on Xbox? Right? If PlayStation games were purchasable on Xbox and Xbox first-party games weren't purchasable on PlayStation, this argument would make more sense, but this argument makes absolutely no sense. Microsoft internal documents further highlighted its incentives to foreclose rivals in multi-game subscription services. What are the internal documents? So this is something I guess I can't really comment on because I don't know what the internal documents say. Unless I missed it, unless someone has those internal documents in the chat. Did they specifically say they want to they specifically say they want to foreclose Sony in those internal documents? YouTube, man. YouTube, you got this spam. Okay. Third parties told the CMA that Microsoft would benefit from making Activision's content exclusive to Game Pass, and that this would be consistent with Microsoft's behavior in relation to past acquisitions, including that of ZeniMax Media. Microsoft did not uphold its promise to continue making Bethesda content available on multiple stores and platforms. Are these serious? They can't be serious. This can't be serious. So again, this brings me back to my two trains of thought as to what the CMA is doing here. They haven't taken 5 seconds to Google. Or the other train of thought, my brain goes conspiracy theory. I'm going to go with they haven't taken 5 seconds to Google to see all of the ZeniMax Media games currently, or any ZeniMax Media games currently within PlayStation Plus that are accessible on PlayStation Elder Scrolls Online, Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, any of those games. I mean, didn't they just announce Deathloop coming to PlayStation Plus? Oh my God. Anyways. So, I mean, this has got to be one of the worst arguments in the entire thing. Makes literally zero sense. In fact, the argument is the exact opposite. Getting Activision Blizzard for Xbox Game Pass would be great for consumers because not only would you be able to access games on multiple different devices, you're guaranteed they aren't locked to a console, and Microsoft, from their previous actions, potentially would continue to honor putting these games on platforms that they were previously on. Like that should literally be the statement. In relation to effect, the CMA found that Game Pass holds a strong position in multi-game subscription services pre-merger. Yes, because they were first in and they did it the best. And most of its competitors are significantly smaller in terms of user base and revenues. Yes, because they didn't take gaming subscriptions seriously and now they are behind. It's the same thing that happened with Netflix. They will catch up. It will inevitably happen. If PlayStation is serious about subscription, they will catch up. Maybe not surpass, maybe not be at the same level, but they will be very competitive with PlayStation Plus. Most Game Pass rivals lack the popularity and range of content that Game Pass would own post-merger. Because it's so early, given the importance of Activision's content, current and future rivals could be affected by any foreclosure strategies using that content. Multi-game subscription services is a nascent market that exists both direct and indirect network effects. Combining Game Pass as the strongest incumbent with Activision's important gaming catalog could substantially reduce competition as a result of total or partial foreclosure or a combination of both. This could raise barriers to entry, reduce the number of competitors to one or only a few providers, and significantly increase Microsoft's market power. The merger may cause this effect or at least accelerate this process, thereby depriving consumers of a longer period of competition between platforms. Again, same old bogus they've been talking about. Foreclosure of cloud gaming. Okay, so this is foreclosure of cloud gaming service providers. Oh, all right. Long document. Cloud gaming technology allows. Okay, so let's talk about cloud gaming. Phase 1, CMA found that Microsoft already has an advantage over rival cloud gaming services providers due to its broad multi-product ecosystem. They literally say it right here. This is great for gamers, broad multi-product ecosystem, including a leading gaming console, a leading cloud platform, and a leading PC OS. All great for gamers, having all of these different platforms in your ecosystem where you can play games wherever you want. Microsoft could leverage this ecosystem together with Activision's gaming content to strengthen network effects. Okay, yeah, anyways, they're saying the same thing. In relation to Microsoft's pre-existing strength across its ecosystem, CMA found that users and content. Microsoft is one of only 3 global gaming console providers. One of only 3 global gaming console. That's a lie. There are multiple different console providers. I mean, some of them are much smaller. I mean, you have all of like retro. I guess in terms of like the big actual new consoles, I guess they are the leading ones. This gives Microsoft 2 important advantages over most other existing and potential cloud gaming service providers. First, Microsoft already has a large user base to which it can promote its cloud gaming services. Okay. Thing is, like, when it comes to console providers, when it comes to promoting cloud gaming, you are promoting it to console players, but like you're mainly promoting it to everybody else who doesn't have a console. Why? Like, they're not going to focus on promoting cloud gaming to someone who has a Series X. It's just absurd. Like, that's not the user base they're going for. They're going for the person who doesn't have a console or doesn't want to invest into a console, doesn't have a setup, but still wants to play games here and there. Telling them that they can play these games on their phone are the gamers that they're looking at, not people who have a console. So I don't even know what the point of that statement is. Microsoft already has a large gaming library through Xbox Game Studios. Yes, which includes a collection of 24 first-party development studios. Given the strong network effects in these markets, the CMA found that Microsoft's existing user base, content, and relationships with third-party game publishers may already give Microsoft a significant advantage over cloud gaming service rivals without these strengths. But why is that Microsoft's fault that these other rivals don't have these strengths? They need to compete and build those strengths if they don't have those strengths currently right now. Cloud platform. Microsoft has one of the world-leading cloud platforms. CMA found that access to a strong cloud infrastructure on competitive terms is important to compete effectively in cloud gaming services. As such, the CMA found that Microsoft's vertically integrated cloud platform may already give it an advantage over rival cloud gaming service providers who do not have a similar cloud infrastructure. We saw Stadia. Stadia failed. They have very strong cloud infrastructure. They have more than enough money to be able to compete with Xbox cloud gaming. They failed because they cannot compete on the same level because they didn't understand gaming enough. They didn't provide enough value. They didn't invest enough in it. They didn't do all of these things that Microsoft is doing. They weren't consumer friendly like Xbox. Like, there's so many different reasons. So, anyways. Operating system, like about Windows, I don't need to go over that. In relation to the ability, CMA found that although Microsoft already has advantages over rivals pre-merger, the merger would significantly strengthen its integrated offering. It would strengthen its offering, of course. That's the goal. The goal is to strengthen Game Pass offering, get more people signed up for it. I mean, why else would you be doing this, spending $70 billion? I mean, PlayStation has been acquiring studios left and right. They literally just bought Bungie, which could be one of the most profitable live service games out there. And they could, I know Bungie said they want to keep it on everything, but they could literally do the same thing with Bungie. I mean, there's just, I don't know. I think I'm just running in circles here. We know that they have no idea what they're talking about. Absent the merger, rivals could still hope to compete against Microsoft by offering a different value proposition that is stronger on at least some parameters of competition. For example, by offering a better gaming catalog at a lower price. Have they seen the gaming catalog and the price Xbox sells it at? What, are they crazy? You're not going to get a better gaming catalog by anyone at a lower price because the price for Xbox Game Pass is already outstanding. And they're doing a family plan. Following the merger, it may be significantly more difficult for rivals to compete against Microsoft on any parameter of competition, as Microsoft would have by far the strongest integrated offering across cloud computer OSs and gaming content. The investment required by a competitor to develop an offering that could compete effectively with that of Microsoft could be significantly increased following the merger. I don't even... They just don't want... I guess it just sounds like they do not want Xbox to be the number one leader in video gaming. Because that's more so than anything, it sounds like what this could lead to. Because I do agree that in some way, Xbox getting Activision Blizzard, Xbox getting Call of Duty onto Xbox Game Pass will lead Xbox to being bigger, more popular than PlayStation. Bigger, more popular than, let's say, Tencent at some point, right? Like, I know Tencent's not very big in the West, but in Asia, they're huge, right? But like they're trying to transition to the West. But at some point, Xbox may be the biggest video game company out there. And that's okay. That's not a terrible thing. It's not a bad thing. The thing here is that Sony is still going to be able to compete with Xbox. They may be number 2. They may be number 3. I mean, Xbox, what is we're at number 4, number 5 right now, whatever they are. They may be down lower on the list, but they'll still be able to compete with Xbox in an industry that will force Xbox to stay on their heels, or to stay on their toes, not on their heels, stay on their toes to continue to compete so that they do stay number 1. So I don't understand. It just sounds like they don't want them to be number 1. In addition, the CMA found that the merger could strengthen Microsoft's gaming ecosystem such that foreclosure strategies that may not have succeeded absent the merger could succeed after the merger, especially when deployed in combination. This merger is not going to cause PlayStation to foreclose. It's not going to cause Xbox to close PlayStation. It's not going to happen. In relation to incentive, the CMA found that acquiring Activision's content could change Microsoft's incentive to engage in foreclosure strategies using its ecosystem. Acquiring Activision's attractive gaming content could allow Microsoft to attract more users to its cloud gaming services platform. Given the strength of network effects in this market, this could make a foreclosure strategy using Microsoft's broader ecosystem more effective, thereby increasing Microsoft's incentive to engage in the foreclosure strategies described above. Circumstances where it may not have had the incentive to do so absent of the merger. Okay, so they're talking about foreclosing it, saying that they may go forward and try to end PlayStation if this goes through, and they couldn't do that if it wasn't for Activision Blizzard. Although at the end of the day, people love to use Activision Blizzard as like an arguing point as to why Xbox is going to be on top at some point. It definitely is going to help them a ton with Call of Duty because it does appeal to such a broad range of gamers. That's the one thing it does do. But if you look at what Xbox has in their pipeline right now, yes, they haven't delivered on all of these games that are going to be coming out, of course. But if you look at what they have in their pipeline right now with just Bethesda and then all of the other first-party studios, what they're afraid of, which is Xbox becoming number one, I think was still going to become number one. I truly do, even without Activision Blizzard. Like, they would still be up there with Game Pass when they start delivering their first-party games every couple of months. It would still just be a deal that literally you couldn't walk into a store, you couldn't look at video games if they did the marketing and advertising right that you could ignore. Like, it would be impossible to ignore it. And it still is. I mean, you look at Game Pass right now, it's an incredible service even right now as we're talking, without releasing first-party games every 3-4 months or whatever. Which, with even Bethesda, they should be releasing games every 3 or 4 months, but with Activision Blizzard, they could literally be releasing games every like 2 months if they had like the pipeline and the timeline of how they are developing these games all perfectly down. In relation to effects, CMA found that the market for cloud gaming services is at an early stage of development, and that the competitive landscape could change significantly over the coming years. That's true. It is at the early stage in terms of cloud gaming, of course. But so was Netflix when they got into the subscription service, and look what happened in the streaming market for TVs and movies. The amount of competition out there is insane. The CMA found that strengthening network effects and raising barriers to entry as described in this theory of harm could affect all current and potential rivals in cloud gaming. Okay, so they go over more of how this deal will make Microsoft so powerful that nobody's going to be able to come in to compete, which I don't believe. I don't think that is a real thing. I think that companies like Amazon are currently in there, if they really want to, could easily compete with Xbox with the amount of money they have to invest in it. But here's the thing: these companies don't actually want to compete with Xbox. They just don't. They haven't invested. It's not their business. We've seen this happen. Companies try to get into the video game industry multiple times. Very few are successful. Microsoft was one of those companies that was successful. They continued to pursue it with the OG Xbox. But the OG Xbox could easily have been the end of Xbox if they didn't want to keep going forward. The 360 could have been the end of Xbox with the Red Ring of Death. They decided to keep pushing forward. The Xbox One could have easily been the end of Xbox, and they decided to keep pushing forward. You can't tell me that a company like Google and Amazon, if they wanted to push forward in video games, couldn't invest in it to push forward to compete right now in the current video game market. I just don't buy it. They're so rich. They have so much money to invest. They have so much money to blow. They have so much money to go out and acquire games and stuff. But they don't truly want to compete on that level yet. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, they shut down Stadia. They literally shut down Stadia. CMA also found that the competition concerns identified in this theory of harm could have consequences for the game publishing market. Okay, so they go over publishing. They're just saying all the same, the main stuff. I mean, we went over it. They're going into phase 2. Yeah. I mean, that was long. Thanks for sticking with me through that, but the chat thing here is broken. Anyways, the point is, out of all of this, you come to what they're saying. It literally seems like they're just trying to protect PlayStation. It makes no sense. I don't think anybody who reads through this stuff, if they actually follow the gaming industry, would make any sense of it. You can see that. You can see the comments. There's no way you can spin this as, like, in my opinion, as like, oh, we need to be really afraid of Xbox buying Activision Blizzard so that Sony can stay alive. Because if they do get Activision Blizzard, Sony will be gone, and we're going to lose all competition. We're all going to have to kneel to the great Xbox power where they're not going to care about consumers anymore and they're just going to push out the shittiest games that they can. I don't think that is a worry. I don't think that is something that is actually something to worry about at all in terms of it eventually happening in the next generation of consoles or anything like that. To me, this just literally sounds like the people at the CMA, like I've said, going through this, have no idea what they're talking about. They haven't taken 5 seconds to Google the stuff that they are arguing that Xbox could do, because Sony literally has already been doing that for years. Or there's some sort of conspiracy behind this. I don't know. It's just it seems pretty outlandish to me, but we'll see what happens. This could also just be their due diligence. This could also just be part of the process because it's such a massive deal, and they're just laying out all the facts. They're just, I shouldn't say facts, they're laying out all their points, so it's clear, it's written. There's no ambiguity to anything, and then they'll go ahead with phase 2 and I guess approve it, or if they truly believe that Sony's selling them, then they may not.